CB on the mic. World Rule Talk. Yeah. CB break it down, yeah, the host with the vision. From the classics to the new, every film get precision. Obscure reels hitting gems, yeah, we dig in the vault. Every frame get examined, every angle we talk. From the old school grain to the high def shine. Indie flicks to the hits, yeah, we cover all time. If it's cinema gold, then you know we gon' say, hit subscribe, tap in, let the critics all play. Yeah, film talk strong, never fading away. World Rule Talk forever and a day longer.
Yo, what up though? This is your boy C. to the B. coming at y'all with another movie review. So we are in our second week of Spring in Action, aka May. And this was one movie I looked forward to talking about with you guys. I actually watched it for the first time last year because when I was younger, this movie wasn't really on my radar. It should have been, but it wasn't. And that's Passenger 57, starring Westley Snipes, Bruce Payne, Tom Sizemore, and Elizabeth Hurley. So, it's a lot that goes on in this movie. This movie hits the ground running. You know what I'm saying? Wesley's character, John Cutter, you know, he was like this ex-cop, you know what I'm saying, who became like a flight security officer or whatever. You know what I'm saying? And then you had Bruce Payne. He was like this terrorist, you know what I'm saying, like this globally known terrorist or whatever. And his character was very intimidating. Like, he was intimidating, but at the same time, he was real calm. You know, I feel like those type of people who are real calm, you know what I mean, and they say things without stuttering, those are the people that are dangerous, you know what I mean? It's weird, but it's true. So, you know, this movie wastes no time getting into the action. Because you have scenes, like, especially in the beginning, where, you know, Charles Payne plays a character named, not Charles Payne, dang, Bruce Payne plays a character named Charles Rain, and he's trying to get surgery done on his, you know, to change his face to avoid the law. But he knew that they were coming to get him, so he winds up leaving the hospital. But before he does, he takes a scalpel and he, you know, offs one of the doctors in there, and then he escapes. And so he jumps out this window and he hits the ground, but gets up and he's still running from the law. It's like the FBI and the cops were after him. But I'm going to say this, though. In real life, it takes an incredible amount of force to jump out of a window. And even if you're successful, you're not going to feel so good, you know what I'm saying, hitting the ground. But the way he hit the ground, you're not getting up. You're just not. Not in real life. But I know it's a movie, and you gotta suspend your belief. But when I saw that, I was like, I don't know. Scratching my head, you know. But anyway, he winds up getting caught anyway, you know what I'm saying, and taken to LA to stand trial. So this is where we cut to Wesley's character. And his character was named John Cutter. And he's like doing this like flight training video to, you know, teach the flight attendants on how to deal with terrorists. And so the one he was working with, you know what I'm saying, she's played by Alex Datcher. And she plays a character named Marty Slayton. She's a very beautiful actress. You know what I mean? But, you know, she basically goes off script. And this annoys John Cutter. And so he was trying to, you know what I'm saying, get her to stick to the script, but she was one of those flight attendants or one of those women who wasn't trying to hear what he had to say. You know what I'm saying? So the reason why he was doing this, well, we learned later on, it was in a flashback where he was in the corner store with his wife. and this guy shows up holding the clerk at gunpoint, and John Cutter, you know what I'm saying, he was in the back of the store, so he's like hidden between the aisle, and then he decides to show himself to, you know, quell the situation, to stop the situation. But unfortunately, his wife was still up at the counter, and the guy holds her at gunpoint. And so he told Cutter to drop his weapon, and he complied and dropped his weapon. But despite the fact that he did that, the guy winds up killing his wife in cold blood. You know what I'm saying? And so this is where we see that he has a little bit of trauma from that whole situation. And then his friend shows up, one of his old friends shows up to try to get him a better job as a vice president, I believe it was, at this security company, as security at this company. And at first, Cutter didn't want to do it. You know what I mean? So eventually he changes his mind and he goes to have a meeting about it. And then this is when he's off. You know what I'm saying? This is when like the second act of the movie takes place, when he's on the plane. And this time it's a real situation. But he's on the same plane as Charles Payne, right? Because like I said, they was flying him to LA to stand trial for all the stuff that he did. And so, you know, Charles, you know, he was playing games with like this little kid, like they were shooting like invisible guns at each other. And the mother was freaked out by this because like Charles Payne, he was a little dang, I don't know why I keep calling him Charles Payne. I'm mixing up his names. Damn. Charles Rain. You know, he was a little too much, you know, he got a little too much into it, which freaked the mother out. And this is when Elizabeth Hurley's character comes in. She plays a character named Sabrina. You know what I'm saying? And her and Marty, like, they're actually cool in the beginning. You know, because they're both flight attendants. And Sabrina is like this soft-spoken, you know, flight attendant who's, you know, trying to calm the situation down between, you know, Rain and the kid. And so, you know, she's talking to the kid, and the mother, you know, she thinks everything is fine now, but little did anybody on that plane know that she was actually working with Rain. And I didn't know this either, because like I said, when I went in to see this film, right, I went in blind. I didn't read no synopsis or anything like that. Now, I did watch a single review on it, but it didn't really talk about anything in the movie. It just talked about, you know, what that person thought about the film. So I still didn't really know too much about it. You know what I mean? Other than the fact that it took place on a plane or a jumbo jet. And so when I saw that, you know, Sabrina was actually working for Rain, that I ain't gonna lie, yo, that caught me off guard. I'm like, yo, because she had shot both of the agents, you know what I'm saying, the officers who had Rain in custody in the head. And so now Rain, he goes up front in the cockpit, and then he's asking the pilots, like, who's in charge? And one of the pilots said he was. So he pretty much did him in cold blood. You know what I'm saying? Then he asked the other two, again, who's in charge? And they said, you are. So this is when, you know, Cutter, John Cutter's character, he's in the bathroom now when all of this stuff went down. And so he was trying to make a phone call to his friend to, you know, notify him to let them know that the plane was taken over by terrorists. But Cutter knew who this guy was. And so eventually one of the other gunners that was on the plane spotted Cutter. And so at first, this funny scene, like, when he started acting like he was really afraid, I don't know why, but Wesley, he could be a comedian and he could play serious roles, but he did both in this movie. You know what I mean? So he winds up disarming the guy, and he puts him in like this chokehold. And now Rain, he had Marty held at gunpoint as well. So Cutter was telling him to drop the gun, and Rain was, telling him to do the same. But then he lets her go and he grabs an innocent, passenger. And he's asking this guy questions like, what's your name? Do you have any kids? And so the guy told him his name and he said he had one daughter. And Rain looked at Cutter and said, well, he was a family man or something like that. And he just did the guy in cold blood, yo. Like I said, the performance that Bruce Payne, keep mixing up the names. Bruce Payne, the performance he gave in this movie was phenomenal. It was phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Phenomenal. God dang. Phenomenal. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was great. And so now, you know what I'm saying? They're playing cat and mouse, really. Cutter is trying to land the plane by emptying out all the fuel, which was a hell of a bright idea. And Cutter actually gets kicked off the plane because he gets spotted by another gunman while he's in the middle of trying to jump anyway with Marty with him. So he gets kicked off the plane and he almost get ran over by one of the wheels. You know what I'm saying? When the plane landed. And then this is where the local police spotted him. And they're taking him down to the station. But he's trying to tell them that the guy on the plane is a terrorist. And he was going to start executing hostages if he didn't get what he wanted. But, the sheriff or whatever, he wasn't trying to hear it. Or the police chief wasn't trying to hear it. You know what I'm saying? Wasn't trying to hear him. Because they thought that he was one of the terrorists or whatever. And so the game that Charles Rain played, he lied to them and told them that Cutter was one of his guys and that he left the plane, he escaped the plane. And so he basically made it worse for Cutter. So they was going to put him in a cell downstairs, but Cutter, he got free. And then this is where he started to pursue Rain and his guys in like the theme park or carnival or whatever. And so they, he actually he was successful in killing one of the men, by kicking him off this ride, and then dude just hit the ground, pretty much splatted. But you didn't see it, that was off screen. But now Cutter, he winds up getting, Rain, and they take Rain down to the police station, and Cutter is interrogating him. But the whole time, the look on Rain's face was just like, yo, you can't touch me, you can't do nothing to me, because the passengers on board are still up there with my other people. And then they're going to start executing hostages if I'm not released and back on that plane in 20 minutes. So he pretty much had a foolproof plan from start to finish. And this really pissed Cutter off. You know what I'm saying? He was wanting to kill him right there on the spot. But then they wind up letting him get back on the plane, because he did release half the hostages, though, before he got off the plane the first time, because, he wanted fuel for the plane so he can escape. And they wind up cooperating with him. But then he does get back on the plane, and Cutter, he gets back on there as well. So I want to, he gets back on the plane because now it's like a police operation, and Cutter's working with him because the FBI and everybody like that came in, told the police chief that Cutter was one of theirs. So Cutter gets back on the plane, and now the plane takes off again. Yeah, it takes off again, right? And so Elizabeth Hurley's character, Sabrina, she was actually like, pretty much the lead gunman while Rain was off the plane. But now, both Rain and Cutter, like I said, they were back on the plane and up front in the cockpit, they're turning around. And so Sabrina was like, why are y'all turning this? Who told y'all to turn the plane around? And you can hear Cutter behind her saying, I did. And he knocked her ass out. You know what I'm saying? And so now it was just down to Rain and Cutter. And the fight scene was epic. You know what I'm saying? Because they blew a hole in the side of the plane and the door popped open. And so now it's the final fight. I mean, it didn't really, last that long, but Cutter winds up knocking Rain out of the plane. And so the plane finally lands. Cutter gets off, and he goes off with Marty. And that's pretty much the end of the film. But I'm going to say this. There was one dope-ass scene that stood out to me, and that was the scene where Cutter was on the phone, while he was still on the plane with Rain. And he told Rain, I got a piece of advice for you. Always bet on black. I don't know why that scene was badass to me, but it was. You know what I mean? So, if you haven't seen this movie, you got to check it out, man. Because like I said, the performances of Wesley Snipes and Bruce Payne were awesome. They played their characters to perfection. Cutter was like this, ex-military, ex-cop. But he was an expert, you know what I'm saying? In self-defense and all of that. And then you had Charles Rain, played by Bruce Payne. You know what I'm saying? He was like a very intimidating villain. Like, he was calm, but he would do you in with no problems. Like, this dude will swallow you up without a scruple. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy was just, man, he was ruthless, like straight ruthless. So yeah, and if I got to give this movie a score, I'm definitely giving it a 9. You know what I'm saying? A lot of people probably wouldn't agree with me. The film was short. It did what it had to do in hour and 24 minutes. You know what I'm saying? Like, there was no fillers. It was straight action. Straight action. So if you haven't seen this movie, make sure you check it out whenever you get a chance. You know what I'm saying? See, I watched it on streaming. You know what I mean? I'm trying to remember where it was that I watched it at, but I liked it so much, I went out and got the DVD. You know what I mean? It was just that good to me. But thank you for listening to my review once again. We will be back here next Wednesday with another movie review. We're going to be talking about Bad Boys 2. Now, I know that's a movie that everybody likes. To me, that's the best one out of the 4 films. You might not agree with me, but it is, in my opinion. But I'm going to talk to you guys later. So stay tuned for that. And I will see you next week. All right? Peace.